Good morning, all. I realized that when I was making my reviews of 1970s dystopian science fiction movies, I left one out, and it's an important one, but it's really not dystopian. It is in some ways, but it's not in others because it's a parody, and it's meant to be funny, and it is funny. And that is John Carpenter's directorial debut, 1974's Dark Star, which is also co-written by Dan O'Bannon and stars Dan O'Bannon as Sergeant Pinback, and uh, also, Cal Kuniholm as Boiler, Brian Narelle as Lieutenant Doolittle, and Dre Pahich as Talby, and Joe Saunders as Commander Powell, and Barbara Cookie Knapp as the voice of the computer, and a guy named Miles Watkins as a guy in Mission Control. There's a great song that opens the movie. Well, it doesn't open, but it comes in about the middle when the credits roll, called Benson, Arizona. That was written by John Carpenter. The lyrics are by Bill Taylor, and the vocal is by a guy named John Yeager. That song is very important to me, and I'll tell you why later after I discuss the movie. Very funny, very influential movie. Doug Naylor said it influenced his initial BBC radio sketch, Doug Holland's Space Cadet, which he then developed with Rob Grant into the science fiction comedy Red Dwarf, which is still going after all these years. There's a German rock band called Bomb 20, which is based on Bomb Number 20 from this movie, and a lot of other references and in pop culture come up. It's been sampled by a number of different groups, so it's part of the soundtrack. What the story is about, it's completely crazy. It's a somewhat of a parody of 2001, and one of the earlier posters called it the Spaced Out Odyssey instead of Space Odyssey, which I thought was funny. But it's the story of this ship, the Dark Star, which is on a deep into its 20th year of a deep space mission, whose purpose is to locate and destroy unstable planets that might be a hazard to future colonization. And they carry these enormous, quote-unquote, thermostellar bombs, which are semi-intelligent, and they actually have conversations with them. And the voices of the bombs, we only see two, bomb number 19 and bomb number 20, are both played by Dan O'Bannon, though he's credited as somebody else. But they're done as sort of a parody of Douglas Rain's voice as HAL 9000 in 2001: A Space Odyssey, except they're chirpy and they're kind of upbeat. Pinback says, "Bomb number 19, are you ready to drop?" And says, "Yes, I'm ready to drop." It's like very enthusiastic, so that's what they do. They go around finding these unstable planets and blowing them up with these enormous bombs. And they're very bored, and their Commander Powell has died because a panel in the back of his seat exploded and killed him. But he is still kind of on ice, and they can sort of talk to his brain through a headset. But it's just, he's kind of out of it. And Lieutenant Doolittle is their ostensible commander. Talby is their observation officer, and he basically just sits up in this observation dome and looks out at the stars all day. He doesn't even eat with them. He takes his meals up there. And Pinback keeps this log, which is kind of funny. It's kind of like a parody of, Captain Kirk's logs in Star Trek. But he's always saying these like funny things. And the log has this thing that it automatically deletes cursing. And so whenever he says a curse word, it just like bleeps it out. And there's like a whole series where he's just like cursing the whole time. And it's just a series of bleeps and him laughing, which I thought was funny. He's kind of the romantic of the ship, and he's always reading like falling in love comics and stuff. And he pulls these jokes, like he pulls out a rubber chicken, hits Boiler with it, and Boiler says, "Will you get out of here?" And he's like really pissed off at him. Boiler's always kind of upset, and he does things like he takes the ship's emergency laser and he's using it for target practice. And Pinback saying, "You could hurt somebody with that. That's for emergency purposes only." And he just kind of brushes them off. They're bored. All they have to eat are these like meals that are like pre-prepared, like liquid in these little tubes, kind of like astronaut food. Looks like they're just drinking soy sauce, which is probably what it really was. And they have nothing to do with it. The entire supply of the ship's toilet paper was blown out in an accident. And they pass through, after they blow up one of these plants, they pass through a kind of an electrical field, and it messes up the intercommunication system between the ship and the ship's computer and the bombs. And the result of that is that when they go to blow up their next planet, bomb number 20 won't drop. It won't drop from the bomb bay. And Sergeant Pinback is trying to get it to drop. He's like, drop, drop, drop. And it won't drop. And eventually they bring it back in, and they're trying to figure out what's wrong. Talby goes into the tail section of the ship. The ship model was very good, actually, considering the budget of this film was only $60,000 total. They did some good special effects, especially the model work of the ship, and some of the interiors were really quite good. They even hold up, I think, by today's standards. And he goes back into the tail section of the ship, and he accidentally steps into the path of a communications laser, and it knocks him out, and that further damages the ship to the point where the bomb accidentally drops again, and Pinback's having a hard time convincing it to come back into the bomb bay, and it says, okay, but this is the last time, and it says it in like kind of a gay, kind of bitchy voice. That was funny. And then something else happens after the they find the planet that they're supposed to blow up, and for some reason what happened after Tally was hit by the laser, it fused the bomb to the bomb drop mechanism, the arm that detaches and drops the bomb. So now the bomb physically cannot drop, and they're trying to figure out what to do. Doolittle actually goes and hooks himself up and talks to Commander Powell, and Commander Powell says, "Tell Doolittle, nobody ever comes to talk to me." The voice of Commander Powell is done by John Carpenter, and even though the character was played by, as I said, Joe Saunders. He's just in this block of ice, basically, and he says, "Nobody ever comes to see me anymore." And he says, "Commander, we have a problem. We need your help." And he says, "What is it?" He says, "Bomb number 20 won't drop, and the pins are fused, and we can't figure out how to, what to do." And it's the bomb is starting to talk crazy, like it won't drop for some reason, because the two false alarms, it doesn't believe them anymore. That this one is a false alarm too. And he says, "You have to teach it phenomenology." And Doolittle says, "What?" He says, "Phenomenology. You have to teach the bomb about phenomenology." And he said, "What's that?" And he starts explaining it, existentialism, basically. But he goes out, Doolittle suits up, he goes out, and he's actually talking to this bomb, which is enormous. It's like the size of a building. And he's telling it, "How do you know that you exist?" He says, "Well, I just do. I exist." And he says, "But how do you know?" And he's like arguing with the bomb, and he says, "All your information could be based on false data." He says, "How can you prove it's not?" And he says, "Well, I guess you're right. I can't." And the bomb starts thinking about, what's going on. And meanwhile, Talby's been going, there's a very funny line, and I love this, when Boiler and Doolittle and Pinback are sitting around eating, and Boiler says, "What's Talby's first name?" Doolittle gets this like contemplative look on his face, and he's kind of scratching his head, and he says, "What's my first name?" That's how long they've been out in space, and that's how spaced out they are, and stressed out from these missions, that they can't even remember what their first names are. And anyway, Talby is accidentally blown out of the ship. He's going on and on about these things called the Phoenix asteroids, and he's hoping to see them. He says they glow and they circle the universe once every like trillion years, and it's a beautiful sight, and blah blah blah. And he's blown out of the ship, and the last thing you hear from him is that he has seen the Phoenix asteroids, and they're taking him with them, and they're going to circle the universe forever. Meanwhile, the bomb is now refusing to even take, Pinback's trying to talk it back into the bomb bay, now that Doolittle's talked it phenomenology. And it won't come into the bomb bay. It says, "You are false information. I can't trust anything that you say, because you don't exist." He says, "No, we do exist. Come back into the bomb bay. Do not explode in the bomb bay." And finally the bomb says, "In the beginning, there was darkness, and then there was me. Let there be light." And he blows up the ship. And Doolittle and Pinback are the last ones left. And Doolittle had talked before about how he was a surfer, and he wished that they would go to an ocean planet so he could surf again. And he says, hey pin back. I think I've worked it out. He takes a piece of ship's debris that floats by that's kind of a ladder, and he steps on it, and he literally surfs into the atmosphere of the planet and burns off. And that's the end of the movie. It's crazy, it's wacky, it's hilariously funny. Um, there's an extended version which really doesn't add a whole heck of a lot to the plot, and I don't really recommend the extended version simply because all it is it's Doolittle's playing this sort of water organ that he's created and playing a kind of a wacky song. And that goes on for a little too long in the quote unquote extended version. In the regular version, it's just a few minutes. It's also a funny scene of there's an alien, and this inspired O'Bannon to write Alien. That's just a beach ball with claws, and it's always tickling him and torturing him, and it leads him, like chases him into a corridor and pulls the plank that leads to the corridor out so he can't get across, and he's trapped. He ends up inside his head is stuck inside an elevator, and he has to blow the explosive bolts to get out. He comes out, and the whole hatch of the elevator is stuck on his head, which I thought was hilariously funny. That scene was done by dragging a box that was spray painted silver down a corridor in the USC, which is kind of obvious when you look at it, but it's still pretty funny. It's still pretty well done. And then he just shoots the alien with a dart gun, and it just disappears, because it was a beach ball. He says to Doolittle, "How could it be alive if it was only filled with air?" He says, "Oh, go away, stop bothering me." But for some reason, apparently, I guess when O'Bannon went to see it in the theater, people didn't laugh at the scenes with the alien. And he thought, well, maybe if I can't make people laugh about an alien, maybe I can scare them and make them scream instead. And the germ of Alien, though it developed from a lot of other sources, was planted in his head from that. He also felt that Carpenter did not give him enough of a writing credit. He wanted to be on a movie where he was clearly the creator and the writer, and that's what started getting him thinking about writing his own movie, though it took a very circuitous path, and I won't get into that because this is not about Alien, it's about Dark Star. Great movie, great song, Benson, Arizona. There actually is a place called Benson, Arizona, and they put up a plaque. They have a road now called Dark Star Road that's a tribute to this song, which is kind of a country western song. Why that song is important to me, said I'd tell you that at the end. When I was taking my California driver's test, I kept failing because I was really, really nervous. And I had failed parallel parking twice, and I was nervous about taking it for the third time. And a friend of mine told me, when you're taking the test, think of a song that you like and sing it in your head, and that will make you less nervous and will help you. And the song because I had seen Dark Star again on VHS a couple of days before I took the test, I started singing Benson, Arizona in my head, and I passed. So I would not have my driver's license if it were not for John Carpenter in this movie. Highly recommended, very funny, very influential. You'll see a lot of scenes that reflect in movies that were made way after it, and it's really, really one of the best science fiction comedies ever made, if not the best.